You know what makes my blood boil? WWE had lightning in a bottle at Summerslam 2022, and they let it slip right through their fingers. Picture this: Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar are lying unconscious in the ring after beating each other senseless in a last man standing match. The referee is counting. The crowd is on their feet. And Theory of all people, is standing at the top of the ramp with that Money in the Bank briefcase, looking like a deer in headlights. And what does he do? Absolutely nothing. WWE handed us one of the most nuclear, controversial, career-defining moments in modern wrestling history on a silver platter, and they were too scared to pull the trigger. Today, we're diving into the alternate timeline where Theory actually grew a spine, cashed in that briefcase, and changed the entire landscape of professional wrestling forever. And trust me, by the end of this video, you're going to be just as angry as I am that this didn't happen. But before we get into it, let me ask you this: do you think Theory cashing in would have been the biggest heel move of the decade, or would it have buried him forever? Drop your answers in the comments because I guarantee you're going to change your mind by the end of this video. The setup, 0:45 to 3:30. Let's set the scene properly because context matters here. SummerSlam 2022, the 30th of July, Nissan Stadium in Nashville, Tennessee. Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, has been Universal Champion for nearly 2 years, running through everyone WWE puts in front of him. The bloodline is at the peak of their power. Roman is untouchable, unstoppable, and honestly, starting to feel a bit stale if we're being real here. Then you have Brock Lesnar, the Beast incarnate, who's been obsessed with getting his title back since losing it to Roman at WrestleMania 38. These two have been circling each other for months, and their rivalry has been personal, brutal, and absolutely captivating. The last man standing match stipulation meant one thing: someone was going to get absolutely destroyed. And then there's Theory. Austin Theory, Vince McMahon's golden boy, the handsome young star who won Money in the Bank just a few weeks earlier at the age of 24. Here's a kid who had everything: the look, the athleticism, Mr. McMahon's personal endorsement, and now the briefcase that guarantees him a world championship match whenever he wants it. The wrestling world was divided on Theory. Some saw potential, others saw someone being pushed way too fast. But everyone agreed on one thing: he was obnoxious, arrogant, and the perfect heel for this generation. He was taking selfies during matches, talking trash on social media, and playing the cocky young punk to perfection. Now, WWE teased us. They teased us with the possibility of a cash-in that night. Theory was backstage, briefcase in hand, watching the carnage unfold between Roman and Brock. The announcers kept mentioning it. The camera kept cutting to him. They knew exactly what they were doing, building that anticipation, making us wonder if this kid would actually have the guts to walk down that ramp and insert himself into wrestling immortality. The match itself was exactly what you'd expect: brutal, hard-hitting, and dramatic. Roman and Brock used everything but the kitchen sink on each other. Announce tables were destroyed, steel steps became weapons, and both men were pushed to their absolute limits. The crowd was electric, fully invested in seeing who would be the last man standing. And here's where it gets interesting: both men were down. The referee was counting, getting closer and closer to 10. Roman couldn't get up. Brock couldn't get up. In any normal scenario, this ends in a draw, maybe a no contest, setting up yet another match between these two because WWE loves running the same match back over and over again. But Theory was right there. He had the golden ticket. All he had to do was walk down that ramp. The cash-in, 3:30 to 7:15. So let's paint the picture of what should have happened. The referee hits 8, then 9. Both Roman and Brock are struggling, trying to use the ropes to pull themselves up. The crowd is counting along, the tension is unbearable. And then, Theory's music hits. The crowd would have erupted, not in cheers, but in that perfect storm of boos, shock, and disbelief that only happens when wrestling does something truly unpredictable. Theory sprints down that ramp, briefcase in hand, the cocky smirk on his face, and he hands the briefcase to the referee while Roman and Brock are still trying to comprehend what's happening. The bell rings. This is now a championship match. Roman is the champion, so technically, this is Theory versus Roman Reigns for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship. But here's the genius part: Brock is still in the ring, still part of the chaos. Theory doesn't try to wrestle. He's not stupid. He sees Roman trying to pull himself up in the corner, looking like he just went to war, because he did. Theory charges, hits his finisher, A-Town down, on a barely conscious Roman Reigns. He goes for the cover. 1, 2, no. Brock Lesnar breaks it up at the last possible second. The crowd loses their minds. Brock just saved Roman Reigns' championship reign, not because he wants to help Roman, but because he's not about to let some punk kid steal what he's been fighting for. The disrespect in Brock's eyes would be palpable. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't supposed to happen. And Brock Lesnar does not appreciate surprises. Brock grabs Theory, and you can see the fear in the young man's eyes. Theory realizes he might have made a catastrophic mistake. Brock hits an F5, absolutely launching Theory across the ring. Theory is out cold. The briefcase is cashed in, the match is official, but now what? Here's where the storytelling gets absolutely brilliant. Roman, in a moment of pure survival instinct and opportunism that defines his character, crawls over to Theory's unconscious body and drapes an arm over him. The referee, confused but doing his job, counts. 1, 2, 3. Roman Reigns retains, but not in the way anyone expected. The crowd would be split between "that was genius" and "that was garbage," which is exactly the kind of polarizing moment that gets people talking. Social media would absolutely explode. Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, YouTube, everyone would be discussing whether this was brilliant booking or the worst decision WWE ever made. But here's the question I want you to answer in the comments: should Brock have broken up the pin, or should Theory have actually won the title in this scenario? Keep watching, because I'm going to explain why both options would have created absolutely insane storylines. Their immediate fallout, 7:15 to 11 o'clock. Let's explore the immediate aftermath if Theory's cash-in happened but Roman retained in the way I just described. The next night on Raw, Theory is a broken man. He's not just physically destroyed from taking an F5 from Brock Lesnar, but his ego, his confidence, everything that made him Austin Theory has been shattered. He cashed in Money in the Bank on two of the biggest stars in WWE history, and he got embarrassed. He didn't just lose, he got decimated. But here's where WWE could have crafted something special: Theory's character evolution. This failure becomes the defining moment of his career, but not in the way you think. Instead of giving up, instead of disappearing, Theory becomes obsessed. He's no longer the cocky kid taking selfies. He's desperate, dangerous, and willing to do anything to prove that he belongs at the top. Theory starts calling out Roman every single week. He's cutting promos about how he was so close, how if Brock hadn't interfered, he would be champion right now. He's not wrong, which makes his promos hit harder. He demands a rematch, but Roman, being Roman, completely dismisses him. "You're not on my level, kid. You had your shot, you blew it." The Bloodline starts mocking Theory. The Usos cut promos about how they would never have been stupid enough to cash in with Brock Lesnar still in the ring. Solo Psycho runs into Theory backstage and just laughs at him. Paul Heyman delivers the most condescending, brutal promos about how Theory represents everything wrong with this generation: all potential, no execution. This humiliation would have made Theory the most hated man in WWE, not because fans didn't like him, but because he failed so spectacularly at something so important. And in wrestling, sometimes failure creates better characters than success. Meanwhile, Roman Reigns gets an entirely new dimension to his character. He didn't really beat Theory, he survived. For the first time in 2 years, Roman looks vulnerable. Yes, he retained, but he needed Brock's unintentional assistance and a whole lot of luck. The aura of invincibility starts to crack. The Bloodline would go into overdrive trying to rebuild that aura. They'd be more aggressive, more dominant, trying to erase the memory of Roman crawling to pin Theory instead of standing tall. This insecurity would add layers to Roman's character that we honestly needed at that point in his reign. And Brock? Oh, Brock would be furious. He'd come out on SmackDown demanding answers, demanding a title match, demanding Roman face him one more time without any interruptions. Brock would feel disrespected that his match, his moment, got hijacked by Theory. This sets up a triple threat dynamic that could have carried WWE programming for months. The alternate scenario, 11 o'clock to 15:30. But now, let's explore the really controversial option: what if Theory actually won? Imagine this scenario: Theory hits the A-Town down on Roman. Brock is too exhausted to break it up in time. The referee counts 3. The bell rings. Austin Theory, at 24 years old, is the new undisputed WWE Universal Champion. The crowd would riot. Not in a good way, not in a bad way, but in that perfect chaotic way that makes wrestling unforgettable. Some fans would be throwing trash in the ring. Others would be recording on their phones, knowing they just witnessed history. The commentary team would be selling absolute shock and disbelief. Theory would grab both titles, eyes wide like he can't believe what just happened, and he'd run. Not walk, run up that ramp as fast as humanly possible before Brock Lesnar wakes up and murders him. The show ends with Theory's music playing, the crowd in chaos, and the wrestling world absolutely losing their minds. Now, I know what you're thinking, this would have ruined Theory's career. He wasn't ready, the fans would have rejected him. And you know what? You might be right. This would have been the most controversial WWE Championship win since David Arquette won the WCW Championship, and we all know how that turned out. But here's the thing, wrestling is at its best when it takes risks, and this would have been the ultimate risk. The next night on Raw, you don't even have Theory appear. You build the mystique. Where is he? Did he really just become champion? The internet would be going insane with speculation. Then, later in the show, you have a backstage segment where Theory is hiding in the locker room, championships in hand, security guards at the door, because he knows Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns are in the building looking for him. This creates the ultimate coward champion storyline, but with a twist. Theory isn't a traditional coward, he's a strategic coward. He knows he can't beat Brock or Roman in a straight fight, so he avoids them. He cashes in championship rematches against mid-card talent. He defends the title in multi-man matches where he can steal pins. He becomes the most creative, opportunistic champion in modern WWE history. Every defense would be controversial. Every win would be by the skin of his teeth. The audience would be begging for someone to take the title off him. And that heat, that genuine get this guy off my TV heat, is money in professional wrestling. Here's another question for the comments. How long should Theory's championship reign have lasted in this scenario? Would a short 2-week reign have been better, or should WWE have committed to a longer, more developed storyline? I'm curious what you all think. The Roman Reigns fallout, 15:30 to 19 o'clock. Now, the most fascinating aspect of Theory cashing in, whether he wins or not, is what it does to Roman Reigns' historic title reign. Roman's championship run from August 2020 to April 2023 is considered one of the greatest of all time, and rightfully so. He was booked as unstoppable, dominant, and honestly, he made that championship feel more important than it had in years. But one criticism people had was that it became predictable. We all knew Roman was winning every match. The outcomes were never in doubt. A Theory cash-in at SummerSlam 2022 would have injected chaos into that predictability. Even if Roman retained, the fact that he came that close to losing to an opportunistic 24-year-old would have changed everything. Suddenly, Roman's not just fighting opponents, he's fighting the uncertainty of when the next cash-in might happen, who might take advantage of his weakened state, and whether the bloodline can protect him from every angle. This could have led to some incredible storytelling. Imagine Roman becoming paranoid. He starts demanding that all Money in the Bank briefcases be banned from the building when he's defending the title. He forces Theory into multiple matches, trying to get revenge, but his obsession becomes his weakness. The tribal chief, always so calculated and controlled, starts making emotional decisions. The bloodline dynamic would shift. Maybe Jimmy Uso questions Roman's leadership for the first time, suggesting that if Roman had been more careful, Theory never would have gotten that close. Roman would shut it down immediately, but the seed of doubt is planted. Internal conflict within the bloodline would have been fascinating to watch, especially with Solo Psycho being introduced around this time. We could have gotten a storyline where Roman becomes so obsessed with erasing the Theory embarrassment that he overlooks other threats. Maybe Sami Zayn's infiltration of the bloodline happens differently. Maybe Cody Rhodes' challenge hits different because Roman is already mentally shaken from almost losing to Theory. The championship reign would still be legendary, but it would have a different texture to it. Instead of Roman Reigns, the unbeatable, we'd get Roman Reigns, the survivor, which arguably is a more compelling story. Every defense afterward would feel more dramatic because we, the audience, would know that Roman can be caught slipping. The Brock Lesnar factor, 19 o'clock to 22:30. We can't discuss this scenario without diving deep into what this does to Brock Lesnar's role in WWE. Brock has always been positioned as the final boss, the ultimate challenge, the beast that cannot be tamed. His matches with Roman were built on the premise that only these two giants could match each other. Theory inserting himself into that dynamic would have been the ultimate insult to Brock's legacy, and WWE could have used that perfectly. Brock would have gone on an absolute rampage. He'd be destroying everyone in his path, demanding to get his hands on Theory. Imagine Brock showing up on Raw, which he rarely did, just to hunt Theory down. The anticipation of a Brock versus Theory match would be massive because everyone knows what Brock would do to him. But here's where creative booking comes in. You don't give us that match right away. You build to it over months. Every time Brock gets close, Theory slips away. He hides behind security, behind other wrestlers, behind contract stipulations. This builds Theory's credibility as a heel while keeping Brock looking like an unstoppable force. When they finally meet in the ring, maybe at Survivor Series or Royal Rumble, it's not even for the championship. It's personal. Brock isn't trying to win a title, he's trying to end Theory's career for disrespecting him. The match is a massacre, obviously, but Theory shows heart. He takes a beating that would end most careers, but he keeps getting up. He doesn't win, not even close, but he earns a tiny sliver of respect from the audience for surviving Brock Lesnar's wrath. This single match would establish Theory as a legitimate main event player because if you can survive Brock Lesnar, even in defeat, you've proven something important. It would complete his character arc from cocky kid to battle-tested contender. The Brock factor also adds an interesting wrinkle to Roman's story. There's a scenario where Roman is almost grateful that Theory cashed in because it prevented a clean finish to his match with Brock. Roman can claim that Brock never really beat him, which keeps their rivalry alive while also giving Roman an excuse for looking vulnerable. It's complex character work that WWE excels at when they actually try. Here's a question for you: who would have benefited more from this scenario, Theory getting the rub from being involved with Roman and Brock, or Roman and Brock having a fresh, unpredictable element added to their feud? Drop your thoughts below. The Money in the Bank Legacy 22:30-26:00. Let's talk about what this would have meant for the Money in the Bank legacy because this is important. Money in the Bank briefcase cash-ins are supposed to be shocking. They are supposed to create moments that define careers. Edge cashing in on John Cena at New Year's Revolution 2006 made Edge a main event star overnight. Seth Rollins cashing in at WrestleMania 31 created one of the most memorable WrestleMania moments ever. Daniel Bryan cashing in on Big E gave us a legendary heel run. But in recent years, Money in the Bank has become predictable. We can usually guess when someone's going to cash in, and the circumstances are often similar. Face champion is beaten down by a heel, Mr. Money in the Bank runs out, hits finisher, new champion. It's formulaic. Theory cashing in during an already occurring championship match, specifically a last man standing match between two of the biggest stars ever, would have been revolutionary. It would have redefined what a Money in the Bank cash-in could be. Instead of waiting for a champion to be vulnerable, you create vulnerability by inserting yourself into chaos. This would have opened up creative possibilities for every future Money in the Bank holder. Imagine someone cashing in during a Hell in a Cell match and the briefcase holder has to actually enter the cell. Or cashing in during a Royal Rumble where somehow the briefcase turns the Rumble into a championship match. The storytelling possibilities would be endless. The Theory cash-in, successful or not, would have been studied by wrestling fans and professionals for years. It would have inspired countless fantasy booking scenarios. What if this person cashed in on that match? Would become the new wrestling conversation starter. But WWE chickened out. They had the opportunity to do something truly different, something that would be talked about forever, and they played it safe. Theory eventually lost the briefcase to Bobby Lashley in a match, which was fine, but forgettable. His Money in the Bank reign will barely be remembered as a footnote in wrestling history. That's what makes this so frustrating. WWE had all the pieces in place, the right wrestler with the briefcase, the right match to cash in on, the right crowd that would have given the perfect reaction, and they just couldn't pull the trigger. The long-term implications, 26:00-29:45. If we're being honest, the ripple effects of Theory cashing in at SummerSlam 2022 would have changed WWE programming for the next year, minimum. First, let's talk about Cody Rhodes. Cody returned at WrestleMania 38 and was building toward a championship match with Roman. His entire story became about finishing the story that his father Dusty started. If Theory had won the championship at SummerSlam, Cody's comeback story changes completely. Instead of chasing Roman, he's chasing Theory, which is a very different dynamic. Cody as the veteran trying to take the championship from the young, disrespectful upstart could have been incredible. It would have echoed classic wrestling storytelling, the established star trying to teach the new generation a lesson. Their matches would have been technical masterpieces with fantastic storytelling because Cody excels at building sympathetic babyface narratives. If Roman retained but Theory's cash-in created that crack in his armor, then Cody's eventual challenge feels even more legitimate. Roman's not just the unbeatable tribal chief anymore, he's a champion who had to survive, who came inches away from losing to Theory. Cody could use that in his promos, pointing out that if Theory could almost beat Roman, then Cody definitely can. The Royal Rumble 2023 and WrestleMania 39 storylines would have had different textures. Maybe Theory is in the Rumble, trying to earn another shot at whoever has the championship. Maybe he wins the Rumble, creating a Theory vs. Roman rematch at WrestleMania, which would be massive considering their SummerSlam history. The entire Bloodline saga could have incorporated Theory as a recurring antagonist, not the main threat, but always lurking, always waiting for another opportunity. The Bloodline would have to constantly watch their backs, not just from challengers but from opportunists. Theory's relationship with other wrestlers would change too. Imagine Theory trying to form alliances with people who hate Roman, like Kevin Owens or Sami Zayn, before Sami joined the Bloodline. These temporary alliances built on mutual enemies create great television and unexpected match combinations. Even wrestlers like Gunther, who was building his Intercontinental Championship legacy, would have been affected. Maybe Theory, after failing to capture the World Championship, sets his sights on Gunther's title, creating a dream match between two of WWE's best young talents. That match would have absolutely slapped. The women's division could have used Theory's story as a parallel. Whoever held the women's Money in the Bank briefcase that year could point to Theory's cash-in attempt and say they're going to do it right, creating meta-storytelling that blurs the line between success and failure. Why WWE didn't pull the trigger? 29:45-33:00. So why didn't WWE do it? Why didn't they have Theory cash in? Let's be brutally honest about the reasons. First, cold feet. Vince McMahon was still in charge at SummerSlam 2022, though he'd stepped down just a few days later. WWE was in transition, and major creative risks probably seemed unwise. Roman's championship reign was already historic, and there might have been concerns about disrupting it with such an unpredictable element. Second, Theory's push was already controversial. WWE was getting blowback from some fans who felt Theory was being pushed too hard too fast because of his relationship with Vince McMahon. Making him champion, even through opportunistic means, might have created backlash that WWE wasn't prepared to handle. Third, the Roman vs. Brock story wasn't finished. WWE had plans for these two to continue their feud, and a Theory cash-in would have complicated those plans. Sometimes, WWE prioritized the veteran stars over creating new ones, which is a whole other discussion about WWE's booking philosophy. Fourth, risk aversion. Modern WWE, especially in the Vince era, often played it safe with established stars rather than taking chances on new talent. Yes, Theory had the briefcase, but pulling the trigger on actually making him champion was a different level of commitment that WWE wasn't ready for. Fifth, and this is probably the most important reason, they didn't trust that Theory could handle being champion. Championship reigns require someone who can carry the company in media appearances, promotional events, and as the face of the brand. At 24, with relatively limited main event experience, WWE might have doubted Theory could shoulder that responsibility. But here's my counter-argument to all of those reasons. Professional wrestling is built on taking risks. The most memorable moments in wrestling history happened because someone took a chance. Stone Cold Steve Austin winning King of the Ring. Mankind winning the WWE Championship on Raw. Centimeter Punk's pipe bomb. These moments happened because someone was willing to take a risk. WWE has become so calculated, so corporate, that they've forgotten that sometimes chaos creates the best stories. Not every risk pays off, but you'll never know unless you try. And the potential upside of Theory cashing in, the buzz, the controversy, the conversations, the unpredictability, was worth the risk. What happened to Theory instead? 33:00-36:00. Let's talk about what actually happened to Austin Theory after not cashing in at SummerSlam. Theory continued to hold the Money in the Bank briefcase for a few months, but the momentum was gone. He lost it to Bobby Lashley at Crown Jewel 2022 in October without ever cashing in. That's right, he became the first Money in the Bank winner in years to lose the briefcase without cashing it in successfully. His push stalled almost immediately. Without Vince McMahon's protection, Vince retired in July 2022. Theory became just another guy on the roster. He had some mid-card feuds, won the United States Championship, which is fine, but it's nowhere near the trajectory he was on when he won Money in the Bank. Theory eventually became Austin Theory again, and then just shortened to Theory, and his character became less defined. The cocky edge was softened. The association with Mr. McMahon was erased from storylines. He became a generic good-looking wrestler without the character work that made him interesting. In 2024, Theory is still on the roster, still young, still talented, but he's not the main event star he could have been. He's a cautionary tale about how WWE sometimes fumbles the ball with young talent when they don't commit fully to their pushes. The sad reality is that moment at SummerSlam 2022 might have been Theory's best opportunity to become a truly made star. Money in the bank briefcases don't come around often, and when you're chosen to hold one, especially at 24 years old, it means the company sees something in you. But seeing potential and actualizing it are two different things. Theory needed that moment. He needed to either cash in successfully and navigate the chaos of being a controversial champion, or he needed to fail spectacularly in a way that defined his character and gave him a chip on his shoulder. Instead, he got neither. He just existed with the briefcase until it was time to move on to the next storyline. The Wrestling Business Perspective, 36:00-39:00. From a pure wrestling business perspective, let's analyze whether Theory cashing in would have been good or bad for WWE. The immediate reaction would have been polarizing, which means engagement. In the social media era, polarization equals attention, and attention equals revenue. A controversial Theory championship win would have been discussed on every wrestling podcast, every YouTube channel, every wrestling forum. That's free publicity worth millions. Television ratings would likely have spiked for the following weeks because everyone would tune in to see what happens next. Would Theory keep the title? How would he defend it? When would Roman get his rematch? These questions would drive viewership because people would need to see what happens. Merchandise could go either way. If Theory became the most hated man in wrestling, his merchandise might not sell to traditional fans, but it would create a market for ironic purchases and for the portion of fans who embrace heel champions. Wrestling has always had a segment that buys the heel shirt just to be contrarian. Long term, it would have created a new main event star, which is invaluable. WWE is always looking for the next generation of talent, and Theory had the tools. By putting the championship on him, even briefly, WWE would have signaled to investors, sponsors, and fans that they are committed to building new stars, not just relying on Roman and Brock forever. The risk was alienating the core fan base who had invested in Roman's historic reign. Roman had become WWE's most consistent draw, and ending his reign in a way that felt cheap could have damaged his character and the championship's prestige. WWE would have had to execute the follow-up perfectly to avoid long-term damage. From a creative standpoint, it would have given WWE writers fresh material to work with. Wrestling storylines can become stale when outcomes are predictable. Adding chaos through a Theory cash-in would have forced the creative team to think outside the box and develop new angles, which would benefit the entire roster. International markets might have been confused, especially markets where Roman Reigns is incredibly popular. Explaining why a young, relatively unknown wrestler just became champion by cashing in during a last man standing match could be challenging for markets less familiar with WWE's episodic storytelling. Overall, from a business perspective, the potential rewards outweighed the risks, especially if WWE had confidence in their ability to tell the follow-up story compellingly. Conclusion 39:00 end. So here we are, over 2 years later, talking about a moment that never happened but should have. WWE had the perfect storm at SummerSlam 2022, two megastars in Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar beating each other senseless, a young, hungry, controversial Money in the Bank holder in Theory, a crowd ready to lose their minds, and a moment that would have been replayed and discussed for decades. And they let it pass by. This isn't about whether you liked Theory or thought he was ready. This is about wrestling being at its best when it surprises us, when it makes us feel something real, when it creates moments that transcend the business and become part of pop culture. Theory cashing in would have been controversial, chaotic, and possibly catastrophic for his career. Or it could have been the making of a main event star and one of the most memorable moments in modern WWE history. We'll never know because WWE chose safety over spectacle, and that's what frustrates me most. Wrestling should be about taking risks, about creating stars, about doing things that make people talk. SummerSlam 2022 could have been that moment for Theory, for Roman, for WWE as a whole. Instead, it was a great match with a predictable outcome that everyone moved on from within a few weeks. The alternate timeline where Theory cashed in, whether he won or lost, would have been infinitely more interesting than what we got. It would have added depth to Roman's reign, given Theory a defining moment, created fresh storylines, and reminded everyone that in wrestling, anything can happen. But it didn't, and that's why I'm still angry about it 2 years later. Now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments, should Theory have cashed in? If he did, should he have won or lost? How would you have booked the aftermath? And most importantly, what do you think Theory's career would look like today if this had happened? If this video made you as frustrated as I am about WWE's missed opportunities, smash that like button. If you disagree and think WWE made the right call, tell me why in the comments. I read every single one, and I love debating wrestling decisions. Subscribe to Wrestling Zone 1 for more deep dives into wrestling's biggest what-ifs and alternate histories. And before you go, here's one final question. What's the biggest missed opportunity in WWE history? Not just with theory, but any moment where